the news cycle picks up, that people have got a lot to talk about. We miss the racing, and so we plug the gap, of course, with something that's a bit techie, conversation and debate, some of which can get a bit toxic, but I digress. We'll get onto that. I'm going to go no longer than 60 minutes, so I'll be off of here by 1 p.m. at the latest. 14 of you watching concurrently, and I'm grateful. I'm going to say this every single time, not to labour the point. Grateful ad infinitum to each and every single one of you listening to my very noddy F1 ramblings. What's going on, Fatima? Brain, Mary, Sling. I hope Mary, moderator extraordinaire. I hope you're all good this Friday morning or Friday afternoon now, British Standard Time. It's been a bit chaotic in the news. So what's going on, Foster? It's been a bit chaotic. I'm gonna start to try and do more of these, man, because I've dropped off the stream life cycle out of practice a tad, trying to focus on the editing videos. But I realise with a bit of planning and a bit of efficient time management, there is room for both, and there is an audience, ergo a demand for both. So we're gonna start to do more live streams. What's going on? Will, legend, C Paul, I hope you're good. Walter, what's up? Will says, what's going on from the States? What time is it? It doesn't matter what time it is. Let's go, Will. Love it, mate. Go on then. What we're gonna talk about today is a couple of things that I want to touch on. We're going to talk about the toxicity of F1, because it is bloody toxic, and it's tiring how toxic it is. And of course, that's in reaction to George Russell's and Lewis Hamilton's coming together, and reactions to that. It's so bloody chaotic in the F1 space, and sometimes it's tiring, right? Like, I love a bit of arguing and a back and forth and debates. All that's good stuff. It is. Some of us live for that, one of which I am. But bloody Nora, can't we just be a bit... If we all love F1 and we all love racing, notwithstanding the fact that we all have our own respective partisanships and confirmation biases, can't we just bloody get along? Like, do you know what I mean? Every time I log on Twitter, I've got a good mind to just completely sack off Twitter. I think I'm calling out to it. I think Twitter is the issue. I think Twitter is a very toxic microcosm of the broader F1 fan base. I think that's what we're seeing. I think because most of my contact with F1 fandom outside of the Cameron F1 channel, of course, is via F1 Twitter. Maybe F1 Twitter is the problem. Peddlers, you let me know what you think about this. But I just feel like it's so like... I'll give you a good example. I read an article just now that was talking about the dominance of Red Bull in F1, and we'll get onto that. There's a really good Buzz Radar report that I would recommend that each and every single one of you go out and have a read, so that you understand the line of travel in F1, because it's techie, but there is reasons for its techiness and the diminishing returns as far as the audiences, or the rate at which F1 is acquiring new audience versus, of course, 2021. Beneath that, when you get into the chat, it's so much finger pointing. It just has me recoiling directly from the sport altogether. So here's what the Buzz Radar thing says. It says that the audience on the back... In fact, let's bring it up. We'll go into it straight away since it's that time. Look, so 2021, Buzz Radar have put together a report that talks about the rate of travel, the rate of growth of F1 going forward. And of course, it's done it by mentions, social media mentions. So look at the first column here, 2021 data. Again, so they've caveated that 2021 data is January to May. Each and every single one of those years, actually, to be fair. 3.19 million mentions in 2021. In the case of 2022, on the back of a crazy season, has gone up 6.14 million mentions. Now, that's a rate of 92.48% increase. That's humongous. 2023, not so good. 1.83 mentions, down 70.2%. Now, of course, you guys will understand what's driving that. 2021 was a bumper season. Blood and guts, Max Verstappen versus Lewis Hamilton, each and every single race, an anomaly of a season. We're not going to get that every single season, sadly. It's just not the way. But a lot of people have come into the sport via 2021, the blood and guts season, Max Verstappen versus Lewis Hamilton, Drive to Survive, all that good stuff. We're not getting that this year. So if you came into the sport on the back of that promise, that was the 2021 season, then it stands to reason that you're going to be a bit disappointed, right? Now, and no purist, myself included sometimes, Sky Sports, any broadcaster of worth will say, well, listen, there are redeeming features in the 2023 season. The excellence of Red Bull and Max Verstappen, some of the god tier qualifying laps that you see Max put in. There is absolutely redeeming feature in there. But that's not to say that new fans are going to like or understand that or even need to. But I digress. Underneath those comments, it got massively toxic. Underneath that article, even super toxic. It went something like that. I bring up the graphics and the receipts in the background, but you guys don't want to see this. You don't want to see this. It went something like this. Oh, well, how dare you blame the dominance, the way the sport's boring on the dominance of Red Bull. Max Verstappen is only doing what he's there to do. He gets paid a handsome wage so that he can maximize his outcomes. Oh, but you weren't saying that in 2014 to 2020 when Lewis I'm like, oh my God, are we really, is this what we're really arguing about? If you love the sport, then why does it always descend into this like murder, death, kill? Lewis Hamilton is the absolute greatest. No, he's not. Max Verstappen is the greatest thing that I've ever seen. Have you seen that lap? It's like, it's so tit for tat and whataboutism and bloody no. I just can't, honestly, I was reading through the comments. I was like, am I even going to share this with you guys? I don't want to give this sort of stuff any more sunlight because it tires me out, man. Tires me out. Now, of course, I always say this on every stream and every live chat. Each and every single one of us has different routes into F1. This is true. I don't want to discriminate against somebody because I've only been watching F1 2 or 3 years and I've been watching F1 all my life. That's not fair. I've been a victim of that type of discrimination for different reasons, of course, all my life. So I don't want to. There was once a man called Hippocrates. I don't want to turn around and do what's been done unto me to somebody. It's nonsense. That would make me a hypocrite. But for it to descend so quickly, just an innocent point about the rate of growth in F1, and the Buzz Radar report wasn't even talking about boring or excitement, right? It's talking about engagements and how many people are watching the sport now versus, or how many people are reacting to the sport in 2020, 2023 as versus 2021. I mean, it's just, this is analytics. And in this sense, the numbers can't lie. They pulled together a brilliant report that I'd encourage each and every single one of you to go and check out, by the way. Buzz Radar, just Google Buzz Radar F1. Exactly this, Mary. Keep it respectful, man, because I'm the toxicity. Come on, guys. Why is it always, yeah, but Lewis is the greatest, or yeah, but Max beat Lewis into. I mean, we're privileged. We're privileged to be growing up at a time where Lewis has absolutely taken the bar on, right? And I mean, how can you argue that Max Verstappen's not the next one? Like it's there for you to see. Greatness is a privilege, and I feel like we should all revel in this without doing the imperative. This is what you should do. I'm gonna revel in it because I watched too much bloody F1 to not recognise greatness. Like I was talking to Peter Windsor, of course. Peter Windsor interview on the Mothership channel, Cameron F1. Go and check that out. Done more views than the Sky F1 podcast this week, which I'm very proud of. But again, all credit goes to my guy, Peter Windsor. We were talking about Suzuka. It just looks different. When a dude does a lap like that, it just looks different. And I suppose the longer, I was just listening to the Adrian Newey podcast, and he talks about how he's probably put 10,000 hours in by the time that he's a teenager. I feel like I must have done at least 10,000 hours now as far as F1 watching. And I think that's the point. When you see somebody putting a lap around Suzuka, and I'm digressing and tangenting massive here, but we're going to jump back and forth. When you see Max Verstappen's lap around Suzuka, particularly Sector 1, if you've got 10,000, it just looks different. You're looking at it and you're like, well, hold on. This looks like a race simulation, and for me, I've got to appreciate that in each and every single time. So what I don't like is when it descends into toxicity. If you guys are mixed martial arts fans or martial arts fans even, there's a brilliant film, Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee. At the very start of it, he's doing this coaching session. A young fella called Lau comes to learn from the great man that is Bruce. And in teaching Lau, Bruce says, don't. I'm gonna butcher this, Will. Help me out, man. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all the heavenly glory. There we go. All words to that effect. Parlay that into F1. People are so busy trying to kill each other and tell each other that they're wrong, I'm right. What about Lewis? What about Max? You weren't saying it was boring in 2014 to 2020. It's not boring now because it's red, but so busy focused on all this background noise that we're missing the heavenly glory, right? There's mad race. Singapore was a bonkers race. Shout out to Carlos Sainz. Increíble. Those last 17 laps. Jeopardy, suspense, uncertainty, friction between teammates, plot lines, narratives, driver hierarchies. Everything was in there for you for all of us to enjoy it. Similarly with Suzuka, okay, so Max ran away with it 20 seconds down the road, but there's stuff in there that you can revel in, eh? We got it, Will. There's stuff in there that we can revel in, and the redeeming feature is the word. That's the phrase that I'm looking for. Yet and still, in the comments, it's how dare you weren't talking all this boring stuff in 2014 to 20. I made a video. I think I was talking about the Red Bull dominance, and loads of the comments underneath straight away. Well, how comes you didn't make this video in 2014? Well, was I making these videos in 2014? Like, what are we? The whataboutism is crazy. But I digress. Let me jump into the comments right quick, man, because you guys, I owe it to you. GM Cam, since you've been watching this sport a little bit longer, can you explain why there's such excitement amongst the media pundits during the dominance of Michael and Max? Brain, it's an interesting question. I suppose you're talking about as versus Lewis Hamilton. Okay, so I'll talk from my perspective around Max's. I've kind of just alluded to it, right? Max is doing things that I think put him in rare air. Just alone, if I'm not going to do the... Okay, so Lewis Hamilton fans, myself, one of which is Cameron F1. But the argument you can make for Lewis being a more robust case for greatness is, of course, his longevity, right? Longevity and statistics. But the way that I've ingested my sports always, and this is my gift and curse, right, is predominantly eye test. What's so many bloody hours of F1, when I see something a bit different, it jumps off the page at me or the screen. Like, I'm like, what's he done there? A la Max Verstappen's set to 1 in Suzuka, a la 2021 set to 1, set to 2. I was just watching, the other night, I was re-watching the Jeddah qualifying lap. Yeah, the one where he crashed in sector 3. I was re-watching it and I was like, what is it about this lap that has me like snake charmed? Up to this day, I still don't know. I don't know whether it's the speed or the danger or the beleaguered, or I'm not sure what's going on exactly there, or the way it's produced, the angles that they cut to and when they cut to, and it is overly produced, and I think that's kind of got me hook, line, and sinker. But I think Max is doing things that, as an analogy, and I was watching an argument that I had with a friend many moons ago on the back of Silverstone 2021. This is a theory that I've trotted out a gazillion times, but I'm going to say it again for you to answer Brain's question, specifically on Max. I rate... You've seen what Lewis Hamilton can do, right? You know what time it is. I'm not even going to get in Singapore 2018 because I read a article about how Max's lapping at Singapore 2018 was better than Lewis's, which is chaos when you look at it. He sacrifices sector 3 because he has a power unit issue and then still finishes only 2-3 tenths adrift of Lewis's God tier lap. That's another conversation for another day. Listen, if you looked at Lewis Hamilton's career, Not least in 2007 when he took the fight to a two-time champion Fernando Alonso, the man to dethrone Michael Schumacher, Reagan Meister, the Red Baron. I know F1 maths doesn't work perfectly, but if you do it by proxy, Lewis is God. Lewis is absolutely God tier. 2007. Listen, as early as lap 1, turn 1, going around the outside of Fernando Alonso, I test that. That's bonkers. That's the man who dethroned Michael Schumacher, a man who I didn't think would be dethroned in my lifetime. Not in that red Ferrari. So Alonso beat him, and then a rookie, Lewis Hamilton, comes in and nails him around the outside, which, by the way, is a Mickey take. To pull an overtaking manoeuvre around the outside on a champion, a two-time champion, no less, is a Mickey take. Because, of course, you got to go around the outside, you've got to travel more distance. So to make the overtaking manoeuvre stick, you need to be going at a higher lick. It's tough. Lewis Hamilton does that to Fernando Alonso. Race 1, lap 1, turn 1 of his F1 career, 2007 Australia. Go and check it out. It's mad. So look, bank that. That's who Lewis Hamilton is, and we know that. That's not up for debate. I never thought Lewis Hamilton around Silverstone. Look, and we're doing it. The F1 maths that I said we shouldn't do because it doesn't work. This is the rabbit's hole that we're going down now. I had a conversation with a friend, and it's a podcast in real time actually. Back in the day, 2021, I saw what happened between Max Verstappen and Lewis at Silverstone. And this is what I said. I know Lewis Hamilton is who I think he is. Like, I've seen it for 14 years now. He's whatever you want to say about him, outside the cockpit, whatever, don't care. Inside that cockpit, there are very few peddlers, if any, who can steer a car, an F1 car, in anger at the same lick that Lewis Hamilton can. That's evidenceable. You just want to look back at the record, yeah. Ergo, I say all that to say this. Lewis Hamilton's stomping ground is Silverstone, Maggots and Beckett, all that other good stuff. He lives for those turns, right? The cumulative turns where a mistake is magnified down the road, going into the next section. That's Lewis's forte. That's Lewis's stomping ground, his home race. Do you know what I mean? Like, check him out, like on a Pizzioni and Nelson Piquet Jr. back in the GP2 days. Killer overtakes. He's been doing this as long as he's been alive around Silverstone. Who can beat? Let me say it this way: nobody can beat Lewis Hamilton around Silverstone in equal machinery. Or so I thought. And definitely not in terms of racecraft and overtaking and Silverstone. Lewis Hamilton, impossible. I cannot. That's a black swan. Impossible to conceive of. And then we fast forward to 2021, Silverstone, Max and Lewis. And you will hear the naysayers saying that Red Bull had the quicker car, and they probably did over the course of the weekend, but I'm not sure it was by that much. Not enough to underscore what Max Verstappen did, particularly in that sprint race. I just didn't force it. I would have bet my house, my mortgage, my wife, my child. Nobody beats Lewis Hamilton in anything near equal machinery at Silverstone. And what did Max Verstappen go and do that weekend? I'm not even gonna. Astounded. Didn't even think it was possible, peddlers. And so I say all that to say, brain. Max Verstappen has been doing things for the past, probably as long as he's been, since 2016 when he won that race in a subpar Red Bull. Okay, so it's fortuitous because Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton obviously took each other out at Barcelona 2016, but nevertheless, the dude still picked up the car and won. So when people say, well, Max Verstappen can't do it in a subpar car, he needs to have a rocket ship. Well, go and check out 2016 Barcelona, right? As an example. People say, well, Max Verstappen needs to prove himself. I mean, he hasn't gone against the greatest, has he? What was 2021 then? What was 2021 then? Okay, cancel out Abu Dhabi. Let's ignore Abu Dhabi. But they went into the final race neck and neck. How can we not? I must be watching a different sport, man. Must be watching a different sport. And then on the reverse, on the flip side of it, people are going to try and discredit Lewis Hamilton, oh, well, he's been beaten by a teammate, and Max Verstappen. Can't we enjoy both? Brain. Very long-winded way of answering your question, Brain, but I hope that makes sense. In addition, dominance, there was not elevated to the success. I don't know what you mean there, Brain. One more thing, and it's like bringing up this race thing, but I'm surprised F1 shareholders, media and community have not put more pressure on the Red Bull entity for comments towards Hispanic. Absolutely. So I've talked about this before. I don't even want to talk about the racism stuff again too much because it depresses my life. Quite frankly, Pedlers, as a man who goes through his life and raises a black family, like prejudices. I could tell you this story. Do I even get this? I saw my son, who's nearly 3 years old, on the end of what I think was his first instance of racism. Broke my heart, Pedlers. I'm like, all this stuff that I've gone through, what, he's going to have to go through it again? I thought the whole point of the next gen was that we advance society and kind of trend racism down to zero so that the next generation won't have to encounter it as much as we did. Apparently not. My 3-year-old first time, and now he didn't know, he didn't understand, but I understand. I knew what was going on. I don't want to come in here and talk about Helmut Marko's numerous indiscretions. I mean, I don't think there's not even a conversation to be had, right? I know that Christian Horner would say that he's not part of Red Bull Racing, and so I think whilst factually correct, that substantively it looks it's almost like a case of tax avoidance rather than tax evasion, loopholes. I think in the org chart, he's part of Red Bull Racing or Red Bull Group, like that's who pays his bills. But does that in any way excuse him from making these at best stereotypical typecasting comments, at worst xenophobic racism comments? Brain, I don't know. That's all I will say on that. Sling, Mercedes becoming the new Ferrari. Oh my gosh, Sling, a Mercedes the new Ferrari. I don't know. I've been harsher than most on Mercedes. That's the truth. 88 of you watching concurrently. Thankful to each and every single one of you. Ad infinitum. Do me a favour and punch that like button. It's free and it helps the channel lots more than you might know. Sling, Mercedes the new Ferrari. It's techie. Mercedes aren't the new Ferrari. I think it's a bit premature to be as damning as that. Give them a couple of years yet before we start talking about Mercedes in those terms. I still think they deserve more respect on their name than many, myself included, have put on it in recent years. Let's not forget 8-time Constructors' Championships, etc., etc. They are a good outfit. Have they made mistakes over the past 24 months? Absolutely. Have those mistakes been of material consequence to the downside of not just the car, but Lewis Hamilton's career, particularly as he reaches the twilight of his career, which probably makes it worse and more painful and more damaging for many Mercedes/Lewis Hamilton fans around the world? Of course. You've heard me on here a gazillion times saying the fact that they took Brazil as evidence, as proof of concept that they should roll the 22 design into 23, even saying it makes me want to throw up in my mouth. Like, I hate it. It doesn't seem like, it feels like really bad, noddy decision making. And it's painful. It's painful. As somebody that was signed up to 2022 as the rematch of 21, notwithstanding the new rules and the regs and new aerodynamics and bloody ground effect, all that good stuff, that Mercedes dropped the ball so badly and continued to drop the ball into 2023 burns me. If they're the new Ferrari, I'm not so sure, but they do need to sort out those bloody pit stops. Credit to them, because at Suzuka they managed Japanese Grand Prix, they managed to double stack. That's not easy. Yeah, and still though, the pit stops were slow. I remember a couple of years back, I want to say, might have been Hungary, don't quote me, but I remember in the heat of battle 2021, 2020, maybe 20, either 20 or 21, they double stacked and the pit stops were rapid. What happened to that? These were like 3-4 seconds. There, if you take a look at the pit, there is a pit stop championship that DHL keep tabs on. I want to say Mercedes like 7th currently of 10. It's not good enough. That's not good enough. Like, nah. So not yet, brain. Let's give that another 24 months before we start calling Mercedes the new Ferrari. That's not to say that they're not worthy of criticism. That's on what they're absolutely worthy of criticism. I've said a gazillion times, right? Pit stops. So you can say all what you want to say about the decision making and whatever. Everybody makes a bad decision. Adrian Newey once upon a time made a car for McLaren that they couldn't even race. It was too bloody dangerous. MP414, I think. Go and check that out. Get me to Cameron dropping bars out here. I hope that's the right. I hope I've given you the right model number there. Everybody makes mistakes. Design philosophy is a complicated thing. Physics and aerodynamics is not a simple subject. 102 if you're watching Conconi. Do me a favour and smash the like. Por favor. It helps. If Adrian Newey can make mistakes, absolutely Mercedes can make mistakes. But what troubles me, the being my bunny finally on Mercedes, is the fact that I'm not seeing the rate of simple things like pit stops, and I've gone on about this a gazillion times before, especially not least on the last lap. Shout out Tomo and Niran. Improve the pit stop, surely, because in my mind that's very different to the expertise and knowledge and continuous development required to nail the design philosophy. They're behind on that now, and that might not fix until 2026 when the bloody rules change. I think that the rate of development is cumulative as at September 2023. It is. So if Red Bull are like 60 seconds down the road or whatever, 0.05% per lap or whatever it is, then, or 0.5% per lap, then it's almost impossible to just stick a wing on, or do you know what I mean? Or do a end plate front wing flap development or something to just it's really, really tough. It's very, very rare that these circumstances arise when you just gain half a second a lap. So it's tough. It is tough, Sling, but yeah, maybe it's a bit premature to start calling them Ferrari. Let me get through these comments very quickly. I'm going to go back to front. Will.i.am, TV production, mate. It looks rapid and great. It's the TV production. Fact is, he still overcooked his tyres. I know he did. You know what, Will.i.am? I know you're not wrong, Will. You're not wrong. Will, go back and watch that lap, though, bruv. It's bonkers. It just looks like Tron. Every single time I watch it, I'm like, okay, cool. I've watched a lot of laps here, a lot of qualifying laps. But that Max Verstappen lap in Jeddah, sector 1, sector 2, of course he made a mistake. It can never be. So, correction, Cameron, not the lap, sector 1, sector 2. He stacked it, yeeted it into the wall, sector 3, because he was too impatient. Outbraked himself, of course, and was too impatient with the throttle. Bad mistake, nodding mistake, a bit of a juxtaposition. And again, if we're going to get romantic, I almost think it makes the fact that he stacks it makes the imperfect moment perfectly imperfect. What are you on about, Cameron? You know, like the Mona Lisa has that weird spot. I don't know. It's just it's a weird thing. When I watch that lap, well, I'm telling you, it is a bit daft. Foster says, for me, it's the speed through the S-bends. Yes, Foster, you've nailed it. Plus, Crofty and Brundle are hyped, aren't they? Yes, the commentary absolutely adds to it. It's a mad lap. I challenge you to go back and watch it and then tell me another lap. I'm sure it was Senna 88, which there's not film footage for. I'll challenge you to show me another lap that looks as bonkers as Max Verstappen's lap around Jeddah, sector 1, sector 2, 2021. It just looks bonkers. And then factor into that, to quote my guy Baxty, the stakes, and don't know, that was a qualifying lap for the championship perceivably at that time. It was bonkers. It looks crazy. And so to parlay back into that point, that's what Max Verstappen's doing a little bit different at the moment. Like but Peter Windsor said it right. He likes perfection. 2014 naysayer voice cam. 2014, Will. People question my Lewis Hamilton fandom because I criticise him a lot. If somebody's if it warrants criticism, listen, I'm an F1 fan first before I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan. If it warrants criticism, why wouldn't you say it? Well, because Lewis Hamilton has a massive fan base all over the world. I'm a truth sayer over here. I'm not gonna bend my truth just because there are gazillions of fans that are going to oppose me. Well, I'll tell you the truth. 2014 was 2014 was a seminal moment for me as a Lewis Hamilton fan. I'll be honest, and I'm riffing massively here. This is the jumping back and forth stream since it is a live chat. I cried in 2014 when Lewis Hamilton won his second championship at Abu Dhabi, because let's not forget, for a while back there, between 2008 and 2013, there was a lot of talk about Lewis Hamilton being, the story of Lewis Hamilton's career was being couched in terms of unfulfilled potential. He can't focus. Nicole Scherzinger, the madness that was their relationship. He's got too many outside interests, and like he's not doing what we hoped he would do. That same chap that nailed Pizzioni and Nelson Piquet Jr. at Silverstone GP2, he's not that same, or even in 2007 that beat two-time Fernando El Plan Alonso from Astoria first time out. Lewis Hamilton hadn't kicked on in 2008 to 2013, and there was a lot of talk in real time about Lewis Hamilton being the promise, the potential unfulfilled. I remember this. I remember having arguments with my best friends about Sebastian Vettel being an Adrian Newey, like an Adrian Newey merchant. Just in my heart, I knew, given equal machinery, that Lewis Hamilton would beat Sebastian Vettel. He just didn't have the. Sebastian was brilliant, right, an all-time great, but in my humble opinion, Sebastian Vettel never, even in 2013 when he was at his peak in that blown off diffuser Red Bull, he just didn't have the minerals to beat Lewis Hamilton in equal machinery. Many Lewis Hamilton fans will say the same thing about Max Verstappen today, but I think it's a different argument. Say that will I am to say that when Lewis Hamilton won in 2014, I shed real tears that morning, real tears, because it was a relief. It just felt like a massive weight off of my shoulders as a Lewis Hamilton fan, that nobody can ever say that Lewis Hamilton is unfulfilled potential. The story of his career going forward was not going to be that, and of course he's gone on to win another 5, which helps. But at that time, it was techie. What's going on, Becca? Sorry, Becca, I'm back and forth in here. Martina, what's going on? I need to get to some of the comments. Listen, every time I do these streams, if you've got something that you need addressing or broaching, 24 hours before, the night previous, I will put a community tab post on there. Drop a comment underneath there. Those, I have to get to those because people are taking out the time. Ryan, what's going on? Lulu, rookie behaviour. You guys are killing it. Madeline. Lewis can't lace Schumacher's shoes, but he's a very good driver on his own. So see, this is it, Madeline. How do you know? How do you know so definitively? You don't know, because we're comparing different eras. Now, if you talk to people that have been around both, I think they will say that Lewis is potentially the more complete driver. But then the argument for Michael is that Michael was like the Michael Jordan of F1, right? The first proper mainstream star that kind of did what Lewis is doing now, kind of before Lewis, that took F1 to the mainstream just a tad. It's interesting. It's an interesting comparison, that the Michael and Lewis comparison. Barbershop talk, though, ultimately we'll never know. We'll never know categorically. But the F1 community, depending on which side of that partisanship gate they sit, will argue definitively, as if they know for a fact, and I can't get down with that. I think that erodes credibility. How do you know? How do you know so definitively? Oh, monocoque, Walter. Right, I'm going to read out some of these comments. In fact, let me go through the power rankings at Japan. I wanted to talk to this George Russell stuff. Not even on this list of the top 10 drivers, by the way. Max Verstappen gets a 10 on the power rankings. Power rankings, by the way, is a list of rankings, the top 10 drivers, that Grand Prix, as per a list of selected journalists. Max Verstappen was incredible, and I think the story of that is that he drove spitefully all race weekend, didn't he? He just did. He was angry. He had a point to prove. They doubted him. TD018 Red Bull were cheating and got caught with their pants down. Oh no, they didn't, said Max Verstappen and Adrian Newey and Christian Horner. It was a setup issue at the previous Grand Prix Singapore. Their ride heights were messed up. They didn't optimise for the bumpy surface that was Singapore Grand Prix. And now this was their get back. And I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Max was imperious. And again, those people that say this is just a rocket ship that he's driving, Sergio Checo Perez, and his erratic performance is proof positive that there is, to say that Max Verstappen is only on the top step of the podium because he's driving a rocket ship in the RB19 is not the whole truth. There is more to this than that. Challenge anybody that thinks that way to go and have a look at Max Verstappen's qualifying lap at Suzuka, particularly Sector 1, and try and pick holes, try and find fault, try and find for any tenth that Max Verstappen, the Dutchman, has left untapped in Sector 1. It's rare that you get laps like that, I'll be honest. Check out a couple onboards. Look at Max's. Go on then. Here's what we do as an exercise if you think I'm proselytizing and getting a bit hyper. Check out Lewis's onboard if you can get hold of it on YouTube. Suzuka Grand Prix last weekend, the qualifying lap. Check out another couple of drivers onboard and then go and look at Max Verstappen's onboard. Pay attention to Sector 1 and you will, as a like for like, if you did the compare the market thing, you will see there's a difference. It just looks different. And again, the longer that you are around F1, the more that these instances, Monaco, Sector 3, just pop off the page at you, right? Because you've watched. Listen, I'll tell you a story. There's a great book called Atomic Habits, and in there they talk about a clinician that just has looked at stroke victims, has got their 10,000 hours in around stroke victims, and they go to a dinner and look at a friend's. Just look at the friend's not feeling well, right? So they look at the friend's face, and instantly, without being able to justify or exemplify why they feel this way, the clinician says, you need to go to the hospital now. And the friend's like, why? I'm feeling ill, but I'm not feeling that bad. He's like, no, you need to go to the hospital now. They're like, why? Just go to the hospital. Friend goes to the hospital and they catch something that could have killed them. The clinician doesn't know. It's that 10,000 hours, right? What I'm saying. When you got the likes of Matt Bishop and Peter Windsor, who have probably 20,000 hours worth of qualifying laps and race time and time around F1 at the paddock. These guys are like the mavens, right? When Matt Bishop says something like Sector 3 is the best qualifying sector that he's ever seen in life, Senna accounted for, Lewis accounted for, bloody Jim Clark, all the other guys. But if Matt Bishop says that, Matt Bishop he's the guy. He's been around Fernando Alonso, and Lewis. For him to say something like that, I think we've got to. I mean, I will defer to those guys each and every single time, just simply because they've got more experience than me. But when I get a bit hyperbolic, when I start using this hyperbole about Max's laps and Lewis Singapore 18, like, check your maths with these guys who came before, with broadcasters like Peter Windsor and, I don't know, Mark Priestley. These guys have been around it. They know more than me. So I'll check my math. If I feel a certain way, and that opinion is ultimately in line with those who have infinitely more experience with me and paddock time and race time. Peter Windsor, for crying out loud, many people don't know, right? Before he was a broadcaster, he's a world championship winning team manager with Nigel Mansell and Williams in 1993, for Pete's sake. What can I tell Peter Windsor? Nothing. Just knows more than me and will always know more than me. Peter Windsor is like an RB19 of an F1 broadcaster, hence why it's such a privilege to sit down with him each and every single time and just tap some of his resource and knowledge. Because let's be honest, peddlers, I will say this about the content creation space, and I am jumping around massively here, but we are talking. The content creation space is filled at the moment with snake charmers. There are a lot of good. Listen, there are brilliant content. Let me mention the people that I watch: Blake, Tomo, Quick Stop F1, Flip It. There are loads of really good ones out there. The Pit Stop Fracker guys. There were some serious content creators out there, but there are also a lot of snake charmers that are in there to kind of to monetize and can't add value. Every time I come on this stream, I'm going to try and kick some knowledge. I want to add value to your life because, listen, you guys are giving me your time. You want to hear something that entertains or adds value to your life, and that's what I come to do. I don't want to be like a chat GP channel here that's just looking to monetize for the circumstance, because there are a lot of those and snake charmers out there. I will be honest, peddlers, but I digress. Louis, you guys are going back and forth. Don't do the back and forth in the chat, guys. That we don't be the change that we want to see in the space. No, I said this. There was a comment. Somebody accused me on the back of the Peter Windsor interview. Somebody in the comments said, "Stop crying, Abu Dhabi, blah blah blah. Stop crying." My response to the comment was, "Be the change that you want to see." There's once a man called Hippocrates, eh? Right, let me show you this. Right, let's go through this very quickly again. Have we reached peak F1? Brilliantly phrased for those of you who follow a theory called peak oil theory. I won't get into that, it's a bit boring. But have we reached peak F1? So again, they're doing it by the numbers, by social interactions. 2021 to 2022. 92.5%, as near makes no difference, with the uptick in social media mentions. 2023, of course, is down 70.2%. That's huge. 1.83 million mentions. New followers, down 46%. Social reach, down 64.1%. Now, what's that indicative of? Well, people are engaging less with F1 because the season that is 2023 isn't as ostensibly entertaining. Listen, there are a couple of things. As I try and write these stories for the edited videos on the Mothership channel, I understand, with help, by the way, but I understand more than ever that there are a couple of different ingredients that go into the perfect story. Suspense, crescendo and climax, uncertainty, storytelling. Those are the three first ones that I mentioned. Those are the constituent parts of the perfect story. And in 2021, we had that right. It was the perfect. I watch a lot of sports in my life, as you guys will be well aware of, since that's all that I go on about. The perfect story is Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, right, in equal-ish machinery. I'd argue that over the course of the 2021 season, Mercedes was marginally faster, even though Adrian Newey thinks that his RB was the machine of choice. I'd argue that Mercedes had the quicker machinery. Nevertheless, say that to say it was perfect. These two generational talents who couldn't be more different outside the cockpit. Lewis has other interests. Max is a racer. That's all that he cares about. Right, he goes home and jumps on the sim. These two couldn't be more different as far as their fundamental constitution. Hence, you have a fan base that's massively polarized, partisanship. Everybody's gone on Twitter to argue about who's the best. Lewis came into it as the best, the reigning, defending, 7-time, all of that good stuff. Could Max dethrone him? Uncertainty. This is the story. And that's why 2021 was incredible. On the back of 2021, of course, you were going to have more social mentions. Of course you were. It stands to reason. And now you get the plateau and the descent when we have dominant seasons. I will show you this, actually. So look, on the right side, we're seeing, okay, so the white, I want you to pay attention to the white line on the right-hand side. And again, this is the Buzz Radar report that's come out this week, talking about the mentions and how F1 is evolving as far as its social media interactions. The white line on the graph shows F1 mentions. The red bar, driver winning margin. So you see every time there's, look, for 2018, for example, let me widen this so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Sack off the text. So look, every time there's a dip on the white line, there is a dominant season. So listen, the bigger the bar relative to the previous year. So let's take a look at 2017, 2018. 2018 was a dominant season, yeah? So look, you can see the text. Hamilton's most dominant season thus far, 25% drop in conversation. So every time you can see a dominant season, a big bar on this Buzz Radar report, you see an equal and opposite drop in the white line. People interact less. This is just the way F1's always been. Let's look at another big drop off. So of course 2022 to 2023, massive dominant. Look at that, 2023 versus 2022, just a more dominant season, right? So of course, look, volume, look at the text top right, volume of mentions on course to fail by 20%, mirroring Hamilton's 2018. So that's the last time we saw it. So all those who were saying, well, where were you saying this in? This is numbers. Like, you can't argue with the numbers. This is the truth, the ostensible truth. Every time there's a super dominant season, people drop out. You're going to lose new fans, old fans. People find other things to do, dial into other sports that are taking their fancy a little bit more, whether that's Champions League or whatever. This is the life cycle of sports. It just is. I just wanted to put some numbers. That is a really, really good report. I'll link in the chat very, very shortly about that. What's Rayhan saying? Now Cam has gone against his own logic. He previously used 10,000 hours. Now Adrian Newey calling RB 2021 faster was not true according to him. All right, Rayhan, look, so you're going to have different opinions, right? And who am I to go against Adrian Newey? You are right. He's got 10,000 hours and he knows better than me. But if you look at the super times, I can share it with you, Rayhan. Me and, in fact, Shez did a lot of the number crunching around this. Shez just put together super times. Here's what super times are. He looked at the quickest lap over each race weekend for the entirety of 2021. And we just tallied. We just looked how many race weekends Mercedes were the faster car and how many race weekends Red Bull were the faster car. So that's the first calc. And then you tally up the total gaps, right, over the course of the race weekend. So Rayhan, we did the maths ourselves. That's the honest truth. I can share the Excel spreadsheet with you. I'm sure Shez won't mind, Rayhan. So it's a good try though, Rayhan. Good try. I rate it. Pick holes, and we're here to challenge and pick up. This is the point of my channel. We're here to pick holes and go back and forth. And it's what I'm calling these streams, let's argue. But we did the math. This isn't me just talking willy-nilly. We Shez, more than me, in fact, put together an Excel spreadsheet. So, not an accountant for nothing, right? Menace, what's going on, Menace? You have to admit there's a concerted effort by F1 to turn Max into an all-time F1 great before his story has been written. Menace, you might be onto something there, man. You might be onto something. It might be a tad premature. But I think, I don't want to get too conspiracy theory with that type of stuff. I think it might be... What else have they got to cling on? We just talked about the perfect story, right? And when you don't have that, when Max is dominating every single race by circa 20 seconds, and I feel like most of these races he could win more, but he doesn't want to wave the red flag to the FIA and have them intervene like they did so succinctly and efficiently with Mercedes, with DAS as an example, or party mode. Max absolutely has more. What else do you cling on to? What are the storylines? You've got them up and down the grid. You do have them with McLaren, Piastri versus Norris. The Mercedes boys are giving you something to talk about, but that's only developed over the last 2-3 Grand Prix weekends. What else do you talk about? You've got to, I don't know, I feel like you've got to talk about the life of a broadcaster is tough. You've got to talk about what's going on, Noir, legend, Noir, long time, Noir, man. It's been ages, but we're gonna talk to the thing. Although I'm running out of time, aren't I? I am indeed running out of time. 8 minutes. Yeah, I do take... What I don't appreciate from the likes of Karun is them saying, well, if you don't get an F1 car going around Maggots and Beckett's at 170 miles an hour, then go and watch another sport. I take exception to that level of proselytization and condescension. I don't appreciate that. A broadcaster's job is to tell a story in a way that engages the F1 fan base, right? Across levels of expertise, tenure and experience. And that for me is why I have and will always have infinite time for the likes of Peter Windsor, because that's why he does so brilliantly. That's why he does so brilliantly. That's why every time I drop an interview of Peter Windsor, me and him are just talking, very unstructured chat. Me and him are literally just going back and forth. That's why whenever I drop one of those, it will probably do big numbers, bigger numbers than the Sky F1 podcast this week. Not to blow my own trumpet, but that's just the truth, because he has this knack. He's just talking. There's no grandeur, or like there's no faff to the. He's just very engaging in the way that he chats differently to Sky, or the guys and girls on Sky. What am I going to Ryan, and I don't agree with you on the Hamilton. So Walter, we're going to prolong this point. I'll go on this, and then I'm going to get to some comments. Some of the guys. Walter, Ryan and I don't agree with you on Hamilton and Max, because I think you are blinded by your Hamilton fandom, as you think I am blinded by my Max fandom. But that's exactly what Cam is talking about. Yeah, I don't know how you want me to respond to that, Wolf. I'll be honest. I feel like I've already addressed it, kind of. But every era has its own goat. Absolutely agree with you. Karen's gatekeeping is unneeded. It's off-putting, isn't it, Will? Just a tad off-putting. Right, let me get some of these comments before I dial off. I'll go another 10 minutes, and I'll try and get some more of your comments in the chat. But I owe it to the guys. Oh my gosh. I owe it to the guys and girls who have commented on the community tab. Every time I do these, drop a comment on the community tab. 94 of you watching concurrently. We're going to start to do more of these. Do me a favor though, like and subscribe if you're not already. Right, let me get to some of these in the community. I enjoy these back and forth with you. Listen, Walter and Rayhan, come at me. Let's argue. This is what I'm here. So long as it's healthy and non-toxic and back and forth, like, this is what I am here for. Hence why the name of the stream and all the streams going forward are going to be Let's Argue. Barbershop talk straight away. Right, let me, what do I need to go to here? Very unprofessional. I wanted to do a deeper dive on that Buzz Radar report. Maybe I'll put together a video, because I think that's really, really important stuff. There are other brilliant, check it out, Buzz Radar. I'll leave a link in the chat. Right. Okay, let's have a look at these comments. Right. Manello says, how do you think Max would react to a young, hungry Lawson as his teammate? Do you think Liam should go to Williams if given the chance over going into a reserve role? Bloody Nora. So I think, sadly for Liam, listen, that second seat at Red Bull is a bit of a death knell, isn't it? Can't go there too soon like Daniel Kvyat did, and Gasly and Alex Albon. These are all very, very good drivers, but timing is as important as anything in F1. Now, I've advocated for Alex. If Alex gets the opportunity, I'd like to see him back in that second seat. Might not fare too well against Max Verstappen, all told, but you can't go into that. You can't supersede Checo Perez before your time, is the point. Michael says, who's quickest? Cam, Baxty or Shez? Michael said, those two are probably quicker than me. I've done my timing carts, but I'd say those two probably quicker than me. I mean, if F1 knowledge is anything to go by, wheel knowledge, then those two have got to be quicker than me. It'd be more scary if number 44 was in Red Bull, because Hamilton would still be the one to beat. It would be techie, Quan. It would be techie to see Lewis Hamilton in that Red Bull. Here's what I think about that. Listen, in equal machinery, not a Red Bull car, I think it would be super close between them. Even as Lewis Hamilton is in the twilight of his career, I think it would be super, super close. However, in that Red Bull that Max Verstappen has 2 years worth of experience over Lewis, I don't think that's a fair test. As brilliant as Lewis is as a peddler, GOAT settings by all accounts, I don't think that's a fair test to expect Lewis Hamilton to jump into that Adrian Newey car and then beat Max Verstappen, who has so much tenure and experience in that car. Not a fair test. Gene says, is George Russell on the way to breaking his own spirit? Bloody Nora. Oh, gee, this is chaos. So George has a couple of different issues. And you know what? Go and watch the Peter Windsor interview because he talks more eloquently to this than I ever could. Here's where George and Lewis, and this is part of the bigger, broader Mercedes AMG Patronus problem. George and Lewis have conflicting priorities. All George wants to do at the moment, and again, this is me fleshing this out in real time. 108 of you watching concurrently, thank you so much. Great for ad infinitum to each and every single one of you. Smash the like, por favor. George and Lewis and Mercedes all have conflicting priorities. So, and it's Toto Wolff's prerogative and responsibility as team principal to juggle them and align them kind of some way, somehow, because teams can't work without a semblance of goal congruence, right? Currently, they're all pointing in different directions, and this is Peter's jargon, not mine. But I agree with him as he's outlined this point. I was like, you know what, that makes sense. George only wants to beat Lewis. You see the way that he, much in similar way, you know, when people talked about Max being super defensive on Lewis and super aggressive in 2021, I think George he's taken from that blueprint, right? Like he just wants to, his critical success factor is to beat his teammate, and that's Lewis Hamilton. And he's got this point to prove. I'm not sure whether that's the best way. If you talk to Nico Rosberg, the way that he beat Lewis Hamilton, again, very fortuitous in 2016, was to be very present and focus only on the here and now. Take every session as it comes, whether that's FP1, quali, the race, focus on that and that only. Don't even pay any mind to a Lewis Hamilton, because that's fool's gold, right? So exercising futility. All you can do is max it. Now, I thought George was of that ilk. I still think he is. He's looking to maximize his outcome every single session. But when he comes upon number 44, it's different, right? The strategic direction of his race at Suzuka, the Japanese Grand Prix last weekend, case in point, right? Had Lewis Hamilton not been on the track, I don't think he would have switched to a one-stop. One-stop was not the fastest way from lights to flag. George Russell made a bad strategic decision because of his conflicting priorities, because he so badly wants to beat Lewis Hamilton in each and every single race, and that could be a problem. Juxtapose that with Lewis's objectives, his critical success factors. Per Peter Windsor, Lewis doesn't give a fig. He doesn't give a fudge for, like, fourth place. What were they scrabbling over? Like fifth and sixth. Lewis doesn't care for that. Lewis's focus is top step of the. But Lewis desperately wants to be up there fighting with Max Verstappen. He doesn't care for you beating him by a tenth in Q3. This is like lost in the round, like fade to black, lost in the roundings. This is like minutia to Lewis. His horizon is bigger and broader, and again, that's a function of his experience and where he's come from and where he is now. That's all that is. But Toto Wolff's paradox, the problem that's been posed to Toto Wolff as a team principal of Mercedes now is that how do you balance those? I've been asked this interview question a gazillion times. How do you balance conflicting demands? How do you manage a young upstart whippersnapper in George Russell, whose only KPI is to beat his teammate, as versus an early 40-year-old Lewis Hamilton who only wants to be up there fighting for whoever's fighting for the top step of the podium. In this case, it's Red Bull and Max Verstappen. He doesn't care for sixth. He doesn't really care for sixth. He wants to race, and he wants to race for first. Not looking to race with you, George. You're the mentee here. So it's techie. Good luck, Toto, and rest up, mate, because you've got a task ahead of you. Mary says, Cam, you know the only reason that Nico beat Lewis was because of Malaysia. There's a couple of different reasons in there, Mary, and that's one of them. It's fortuitous. And again, if I put my bloody variance analysis accounting cap on, there's a series of them, isn't there? Not least the reliability issues that struck Lewis Hamilton throughout that season. You can argue about them swapping around the pit crews mid-season. You can argue that Lewis probably wasn't in the best place as far as his mental and what was going on outside of the track in 2016. Could argue that Nico was really, really good as well. He was really, really good. Did Nico take that season more seriously than Lewis? Probably. He needed to. There's no way that Nico Rosberg was going to beat Lewis Hamilton on natural talent alone. But again, in my old age, I think there's something to be said for outperforming. Back in the day, the way that I got into F1, Nigel Mansell first season and others, I fell in love with the natural talent of a Senna. His ceiling was so much higher than anybody else's just because that God-given ability. But in my old age, I've come to respect those people who, through industry and dogged determination, just out-hustle a more naturally talented, ostensibly more naturally talented driver. And if that's not what Nico Rosberg did in 2016, with a bit of luck, mind, then I don't know what is. The Mercedes want to beat Ferrari. That is how he is contained. Yeah, well, they want to beat everybody, I suppose. Noel Lewis's sole focus is to get back what was stolen from him. Oh, Noel. How are we going to go into 2021? I'm too tired, Noel. Stolen. Yeah, it was bad, wasn't it? But I can't even... Noel, you know what it is? I will say this. I have self-critique time. Cameron F1's attention span, if I talk about myself in third person, I hate it when people do that. My attention span is very short. And so I can't come in here every time and just do the... Is it a low-hanging journalistic trope to come on here and talk about Abu Dhabi 21 every single time? I put out a video on the Mothership channel about Abu Dhabi 21, top 5 reasons why you can't blame Michael Massey. I'll talk to it very quickly. I was in love with a Brian Kenny hosted ESPN show called The Top 5 Reasons Why. And they would look at controversial sporting circumstances and debunk them, try to argue the case against what conventional knowledge held to be true. I thought the Michael Massey circumstance in Abu Dhabi 21 was brilliant for it. And there's a case to be made. Like, I can tell you some things. One day we will talk about it. I was in touch with a steward who worked that race. One day we will talk. When I write my book, we will talk about it. I don't... The outcome from Lewis Hamilton's perspective, okay, absolutely he was wronged, but my attention span's too short in the while. That's what I mean to say in essence. I don't know if I can... Every stream I can't come on and just do Abu Dhabi 21. Do the diatribe and the deep dive. That Michael Massey video is probably like the last time that I wanted to... It's painful, right? Mary will attest to this. It's painful, but also it's boring to always come in here and say, wow, Lewis was wronged, and like, not boring. It does need to be talked about. It warrants discussion, of course it does. But I mean, if I came on here every single time and talked about 1994 and the way in which Damon Hill was wronged, or Jerez 97 and the way in which Jacques Villeneuve was wronged, like, do you know what I mean? This would be the injustice stream instead of an F1 live chat. We could do it. Cryptic, I will sort out the Discord, I promise. There's a couple things in the works over the next couple of weeks that we will discuss, I promise. Martina says he had to pit. And why did he have to pit in Abu Dhabi? Checo Perez played the part. Max Verstappen, of course, played the part. The safety car played the part. Go and watch that video on the Cameron F1 Mothership channel. Top 5 reasons why you can't blame Michael Massey. It's a decent video, even if I do say so myself. Cam, no, of course, Cam, I was making the point. No, I agree with you. I agree with you, Noah. Oh, with respect to George, yeah. So this is why, Noah has a point. This is why context is key in all of these circumstances. And I'm going long. I'll go another 10 minutes because I need to read out these comments and we'll continue to talk. 10, 20 minutes I'll go for. It's a 90-minute stream. Bloody Nora, Cameron. Poor chairmanship, Cameron. Sort out your timing. 114 of you watching concurrently, though. Thank you. So Noah makes the point. The context of the George Russell interactions and the radio messages, the background to that, as far as Lewis Hamilton fans, millions of around the world are concerned, is the injustice of 2021, right? The eighth, the record-breaking eighth that was taken from Lewis, and the knock on George Russell for many, some will say, is that he hasn't gotten the assignment. I don't think that's quite right because they're not in a championship-winning car yet. The true test of that, Noir, will come next year, hopefully, when Mercedes build a rocket ship of a W15, which I hope happens. I'm not sure it will. Not impossible, but not the most plausible. But that will be the true test of it. And again, if I defer to the likes of Matt Bishop and Peter Windsor, Peter said for the longest time, Peter said it on our last chat, didn't he? That it's too late. That the acrimony Mercedes cat is out the bag. The Pandora's box is open now, and there's no closing that back. That rules of engagement. I think here's what Toto needs to do if he's smart and he wants to get ahead of this. The same contract that he made Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton sign in 2016 that said, listen, you're going to get docked this amount of hundreds of thousands or millions if you guys come together. He needs to make George and Lewis sign something similar, because otherwise they're going to come together. They're racers, right? In the heat of the moment, you can say all this and set out all these rules of engagement. You can come over the radio and tell Lewis as much as you want to leave each other's space. But in the heat of battle, these things happen. You don't think they had that intention in 2016? But Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton still came together more often than they'd have liked, particularly most noteworthy Barcelona 2016. So I think they've got to incentivize these guys properly to not come together, put proper rules of engagement in place, not just a pit radio message when they're about. Do you see what Red Bull do to Checo Perez? I'm not going to go into the conspiracy theories. I think he's in equal machinery. But when Checo Perez is in a bit of a feisty mood and Max Verstappen's coming up next to his gearbox, they just pit him. He just can't be bothered. They just don't want that. What they don't need, their worst case scenario is a repeat of Baku, right? When Danny Rick and Max Verstappen came together. They're not having that, and they move accordingly, strategically and tactically. They won't allow that to take place. And Mercedes have got to get on the front foot with this stuff, I think. That's what I think. Madeline, looking to re-litigate for Abu Dhabi still. Lou should have lost that title long before Abu Dhabi 21. Oh, Madeline. I'm sure I said I wasn't going to do this, Madeline. All right, Madeline. The case against what you said is that ultimately Lewis and Max went into Abu Dhabi level on points, and then, to use Nasher Quickstop F1's phraseology, there was an act of God. Something that shouldn't have happened via Michael Massey, and that's how Max Verstappen won. The case for what you're saying, Madeline, though, if you watch the top 5 reasons why you can't blame Michael Massey on the Mothership Cameron F1 channel, there are lots of other contributants, not least of which 25 points that Lewis lost at Brake Magic through a mistake of his own. Baku. Imola was another one. Hungary, there were strategic mistakes made by Mercedes. Silverstone, the cake that is 2021 has many ingredients. That outcome wasn't. There is a thing called availability heuristic, where as we remember a circumstance, the thing that pops to the memory, we attribute the biggest percentage of that causality. So the way that most people remember 2021 is, well, Abu Dhabi, Michael Massey, they went into that last race level. So all that it was Michael Massey. If I'm an accountant presenting to the board and they want to know the causes, every single cause, if we're doing the variance analysis of 2021, okay, so an absolutely big component of that is Abu Dhabi, Michael Massey, Checo Perez's defence, all that good stuff. But you've also got to talk about Max Verstappen was brilliant all season, super aggressive, cool, but he drove incredible. Talked about Silverstone already. Bloody Cota. Do you guys remember Cota? I feel like I was on here streaming live. Nobody, look, for my money, nobody or very few people ever in Lewis Hamilton's career have fended off Lewis Hamilton in the latter stages of a Grand Prix when he's on fresher rubber and he's that close. When Max Verstappen, when he'd saved tyres sufficient to fend off Lewis Hamilton at Cota, I was like, all right, then I'm looking at something different here because I've never seen that before. I can't remember. Maybe it's me being noddy and my data bank of F1 being shallower and more narrow than I'd like. But I can't remember somebody in that circumstance doing that to Lewis Hamilton, not named Max Verstappen. When Max Verstappen did that, I was like, right, we're looking at something a bit different here. So nobody's not going to tell me that Max... When people are saying, "Oh, Max hasn't done it" and whatever, don't confuse. I'm not gonna. Okay, let me not use imperatives. It's very easy to confuse dislike for a person with a critique of their competence. I just didn't think anybody. I didn't think he might. Similar to Schumacher and what Alonso did to him. I didn't think I'd ever see somebody in that Cota circumstance towards the latter stages of a Grand Prix on older tyres than Lewis Hamilton 7-time. I didn't think I'd ever see anybody be able to hold him off in equalish machinery. And it happened, and Max Verstappen did it. So there were many ingredients in that 2021 pie. That's what I will say. Yeah, they are playing 4D chess. Well, I love the terminology. Red Bull are absolutely playing 4D chess. Curry, what's going on? I hope you're good. Curry, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Go on then, we'll go another... I'm shutting down at 5:30 on the nose before I get and divorce. But I do need to read that. Anytime you're doing one of these, I will say it again for the avoidance of doubt. 24 hours before, I'm going to start doing more of them because I think you guys appreciate the back and forth. Derek Warwick and Gary Connolly need to go as steward, says Mary, moderator extraordinaire. Oh! Mary, do we really have time to do the FIA diatribe on this cast? 104 of you watching can currently do me a favour and smash the like. And do not forget to subscribe if you're not already. Madeline, I feel like I've made all the 2021 points that I'm going to make. Mary, about Derek Warwick. So Derek Warwick's a bit of a character, isn't it? And you want Charlie Whiting, I feel, is testament to the fact that you want people in post as far as stewardship and race directorship who have raced and have a bit of common sense and competence and know how to govern a race. Of course, you want consistency and you want people that are going to show up. You want full-time stewards and race directors. It helps for consistency and precedence and avoids circumstances like Max Verstappen's no punishment for impeding Yuki Tsunoda, and then you get to the following race and you've got a new set of stewards and they review the decision at the previous race and they rescind that and say that it was right. It borderline brings the sport into disrepute. It does, and I understand it. Derek's a bit of a... So I know what you're alluding to with Derek, Mary. The comment that he made about Max Verstappen is the great white hope. But I've got Mary, I'm not going to do it today. It will take too long. That great white hope term is very, very techy. And there's a tendency to look at it and just go racist. It's off-piste. And I think Derek was out of whack as a person in a senior position for saying that about Max Verstappen. He absolutely was. But as a boxing fan, Mary, the great white hope means something different to me. Like it's a phrase that I've heard. It's not the first time I've heard that phrase, particularly around boxing. I'll tell you guys a very quick story. I should do a live call in. Menace, I'll start doing. Menace, I need to step up my game, man. I do really. On the Discord, when I start at the Discord, we'll be able to talk more frequently because I know you guys enjoy it. Dislike for somebody with critique. Walther, mate, open critique, welcomed, Walther. We're not going to agree on everything. And Walther, since you're in here respectfully going back and forth, I encourage that genuinely. Menon, the fast one who can beat anyone and everyone. You guys are killing it, Verstappen. We've got on to 2021, haven't we? All right, I'm not going to talk about 2021 anymore. We'll cover it another day because this stream will go on more than another 12 minutes and I don't want it to. Mary, I know that I need to be... You know what, Mary? Put a pin in that, Mary. I'll talk about this great white hope thing very quickly. Great white hope, there's a tendency to the term... If you've never seen the term great white hope before and you see Derek Warwick talking about Max Verstappen, in those terms, it's like, what? What are you doing? But as a boxing fan, Great White Hope, here's what it means to me. There was a fight back in the day between a chap called Jerry Cooney and Larry Holmes. Historically, the heavyweight championship of the world has been held by a black man ever since the days of Jack Johnson. It's just pretty much changed hands exclusively to another, like Jack Johnson. Like if you think in most recent history, Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, Buster Douglas, Lennox Lewis. Okay, so Vladimir and Vitaly for a while, but this is case in point, right? They were the Great White Hope, and I don't think it's millions of fans, millions of F1 fans. We're doing the race thing now, and it's going to get techie. I'll go a couple of minutes in this. I don't think it's look. Let's take my mum as a good example. I'll talk to this because this is personal. Oh no, Harley killing me. I will get onto the watch alongs. Look, as far as the Great White Hope's concerned, I don't think it's a crime to, in a sport, as an example, where there has been historically only participants of a particular ethnicity. If you're a young black boy and you see another young black boy coming up through the ranks in F1, how can I not relate to that? It's a non sequitur almost. It's a non-point. So I think Derek Warwick's point. Let me parlay back into the boxing. Yeah, Larry Holmes was the latest in the long list of black heavyweight champions. Larry Holmes. Before him it was Muhammad, and then before him it was Joe Frazier, and then before him it was Sonny Liston. These are all black boxers, right? So the Great White Hope has been a term that's long been used in boxing circles to just signify a potential white heavyweight champion, because, and it makes sense in those terms, right? Because historically, it's always been a black man heavyweight champion. So the Great White Hope, I don't see as a particularly offensive term, particularly if you reverse it. My mum has no interest. The day that Lewis Hamilton retires, my mum will never watch another F1 race again. She sees her son in Lewis Hamilton, right? In Lewis Hamilton, she sees somebody that is the mirror image of her son, right? That's her investment. That's her buy-in to F1, and I can't hate that. So if Derek Warwick's point was Max, he's techie, he's different to boxing, and that's where Derek Warwick's analogy falls down. I won't say more than that because it's going to get techie. We'll be going another 200 minutes. George Foreman, Omar, there's loads. So it makes sense. It makes more sense in the boxing sphere, and that's why I've never really taken exception to it. Derek's kind of, he's saying that a black guy has been winning for 7 years now. So, but it's not the same. It would have to be, for Derek White to say something like that, F1 would have to be dominated in the same way that heavyweight boxing is by black people, right? And it hasn't been. It's been the opposite. So I think Derek's thing is a bit, I see what he was going for, that a black man had been so dominant for so long, but I think Derek kind of misused the term. Makes more sense in boxing. Right, let's go. BV, I think we've all got biases that we need to recognise, mate. I'll be honest. Smash the like button. Poor Mary. I'm going to get onto comments. You guys are killing it in the chat. Madeline, actually, if you remove Abu Dhabi, Max still wins the championship. You need to exit. I'm not going to talk about Abu Dhabi again. It's too combustible and it's monotonous, guys. Let's be honest. I know we all like to talk about it in the back and forth. But then what do you mean if you take Abu Dhabi out? That is not how it works. Techie. I can't, guys. I can't do the Abu Dhabi. We were doing Abu Dhabi stream and we can hash it out. But it's... yeah, no, you guys can go back and forth so long as it's healthy. But Abu Dhabi, I'm not going to talk about it any longer because we've got less than 10 minutes, T-10, and I need to get to some comments because F1 is more than just Abu Dhabi. As controversial circumstances that was, it's there we go in the wall. I will agree with that. Sometimes it's most edifying to agree to disagree. Abu Dhabi wasn't the first controversial circumstance in all of F1 history, nor will it be the last. And I don't say that to trivialise the pain that many fans around the world attach with Abu Dhabi. but it's, I don't know. He shrugs his shoulders and says not to trivialise, but I'm not going to talk about it. Right, let me get to some comments. And again, remember, every time I do these, there will be a community tab post. If you've got something that you want addressing in there, leave a comment underneath those and I'll get to each and every single one of those. Best way to structure these, and I'm going to try and do more. To Mary and Noel, your points about the watch along. I desperately want to do another watch. The problem with the watch along, right? If you're going to do a watch along properly, as I like to do them, again, this is a bit ad hoc and impromptu because we're talking and going back and forth and I'm all over the place. But I like to structure these. I want to come on here and be the best. I want to present to you as informative and entertaining as I can possibly, and that necessitates a bit of due diligence and work and research beforehand. So I was finding when I was doing the watch alongs, if I do quali and the race, I was putting in about 90 minutes of research before quali, so I understood, refresh my memory, watch qualifying from the previous year, refresh my memory of the nuances of the turns, learn all of the names, the Maggots and the Becketts and bloody Cops and Spoon and whatever, 1A, 1B as Peter Windsor calls it, and then present to you the kind of the facts and stats that you need to know to enhance your viewing experience, right? The sort of stuff that I don't think Sky does a little bit, but not as, put my own slant on it. And honestly, Mary and the While, I was finding that it just you know what, Mary, I don't mind the back and forth. I'm going back and forth as it is now. I don't mind the back and forth as long as you guys keep it healthy. If it's healthy and edifying, as long as you're not name calling and trying to kill off each other, then we're here for it. That's why they're calling. I'm still going to start to call these streams Let's Argue. Kari, I appreciate you saying that about the last lap. I was a bit gutted for the last one, I'll be honest, because the sound wasn't perfect. And that wasn't my best performance anyway. Right. As I was saying, the watch-alongs require a lot of due diligence before. So I was finding that I was putting in anywhere between like a full day's worth of work over the course of a weekend. And I'm not sure that, I think what the watch-alongs look like going forward, I feel like it might be something like this post-quali and post-race so that we can just dissect. I think that's the best way. I can do a cheeky half an hour preparation and then come on and we can have a quick back and forth. But doing a bloody 2-hour race watch along, every single race watch along, and plus I don't trust anymore putting up the data feed in the background because the F1 copyright masters are getting a bit techie and we don't want to get a copyright strike and have them take down any more channels. That's the truth. Right, let me get some questions. T-4 minutes and we are going to get some questions. Remember, smash the like, peddlers. Going to try and do more of these 3 times a week now because there's a space in the market for these type of... Look, if you look at other sports, there are like football, Goldbridge doing this. There are like loads of people who are absolutely nailing the live stream, the live chats. MMA, they've got 1,000. I don't know who's having regularly... I don't know. I'd watch them, but I don't think they're out there. Hence why I'm going to start doing more of them. Right, let me get some of these comments. Been watching 26 years, plus watch Schumacher, Vettel. The sport is going to its largest ever, chasing clicks and ratings. Okay. Jesus Fun, 5619. There is a need as of September 2023, there is a need to get the click. I don't care what the medium, if it's Facebook, YouTube, you've got to. This is the digitized social media world that we live in. It's impossible not to listen. If you're just Peter Windsor can get away with it, right? Because his content is so pure. He doesn't need to spend 1 million hours on thumbnails and clickbaity titles. But for the rest of us, the rest of the F1 content creators, thumbnails and titles are really important because otherwise, listen, you can make the best video in the world, right? If nobody clicks on it and watches it, what was it all in aid of? So I get it. I'd much love, if it wasn't that time, if the space was different, I would love it, but it's just a very competitive environment out there. So even for the likes of Sky Sports on their podcasts. They need to, I mean, if you look at their podcast thumbs, even they're like leaning into the clickbaity stuff because they realise it's super, super competitive. When Noddy Cameron F1 can have a chat with Peter Windsor and that do circa 60,000 views in the space of a couple of days, and the Sky F1 podcast has done less than that. That's the official international syndicated broadcaster. That kind of goes to show you just how competitive it is, right? Social media engagements, we've done that to death. Alice, I think. Nothing much to complain about. Yeah. Merck need James back. Oh my gosh, do Merck need James back? I think James is back now. James Vowles or Vowles. He's back. I mean, look at Netflix post-COVID. Prime HBO, NBA, says Eduardo, NHL, NFL, etc. Everyone has either plateaued. Well, that's not quite true, is it? I don't think that's true. I'll do this now. Right, let me pull something up very quickly. Because if you look at the other sports, they haven't plateaued as much. Some of them, Champions League, in fact, no, he makes a point, Eduardo does, to be fair to him. I think most of them have plateaued. Because you had this weird dichotomy, or this weird paradigm shift. In the world during COVID, everybody was at home and there was nothing else to do other than consume content. That's why there were several F1 content creators that nailed their timing. The went Tomo absolutely smashed it. Josh Revel, absolutely nailed it. Put out the best F1 content creations in the space at the right time. Timing's really, really important. And I suppose you've got to factor that into the evolution of the growth of the F1 experience and fan base. It's techie, that. I feel like there's another video entire that needs doing on that. F1 engagement fees. Also, and George says, game. The more important thing, the more people are noticing here, especially since Singapore, is that there's unknown, unspoken bias against George to degrade, delegitimize anything he's done. Oh my gosh. Techie. George is an incredible driver, I'll say that much. He's sick. I don't think there's a campaign against him. No, Lewis fans hate him, but could argue with good, especially on the back of his behaviour. Look at this. If I'm Lewis Hamilton, on the back of what happened in Singapore, where Lewis Hamilton, for want of a better word, just stood down, right? He kind of like, even though he had the faster car, fresher tyres, managed his tyres better in the final 17 laps of Singapore. Lewis just said, you know what, George, this is your time, mate. You're my mentee. I'm your mentor. I'm not going to steal your 15 minutes of fame. Like, have at it, George Russell. First of his name from Kings Lynn, Norfolk. Go for it, chap. So that happened in Singapore. So then, in my mind, how I would play this if I was George, I would remember the bly or the what's the word that I'm looking for? The favour that Lewis and Mercedes kind of gave me in Singapore. But in George's mind, because all he wants to do every single race weekend, as we've touched on and elucidated already, all he wants to do is beat Lewis Hamilton every single race. So that's sunk cost now. That the goodwill that he was afforded by Lewis and Mercedes at Singapore is like, that's gone. I don't owe anyone any favours, and that doesn't sit well for Lewis fans around the world and fans more broadly of F1. It feels a bit his team ethic when it suits sometimes is George privatising the profits and socialising the losses. And that's not a good look. Just doesn't work. F1 is an ish show where you drive as slowly as possible to win. So Cupid, I understand where you're going with that. Carlos Sainz did something similar at Singapore, right? But God tier driving and God tier racecraft from the chap in that he realised that the critical path analysis between him and victory was to carry along Lando Norris using that DRS, to use him as an impediment to the charging black Mercedes of 44 and 63. And I don't hate that. I think that's God tier smarts from Carlos Sainz. So whilst you'll say, listen, they drive slowly and have to manage tyres and temps and all this other stuff, and it's not like back in the day, 2004, where they could go hell for leather over the course of a stint. I think there is... I don't mind, in the guise of what Carlos Sainz did at Singapore. I don't hate it. I will be honest with you. I thought that was God tier. Now again, I would defer to Peter. Peter, when in my chat with him, was like, listen, if you're Verstappen or you're Lewis, you don't need to play those games. You put your foot down and you make the gap. Why am I concerned about Lando? All I need to be concerned about is making sure that the gap between me and the rest is big enough for me to make sure I take the checkered flag. And I don't hate that. But I think Carlos was quite crafty in being aware of the line of least resistance between where he was and victory. I don't hate that. And Fangio, listen, people have said loads. Dario Franchetti attributed it to Jim Clark. I think the person that said you want to win in the slowest, least effort, most efficient way, Juan Manuel Fangio. He's the dude. The goal in F1 is to take as little out of the car as far as mechanical tax, the tyres, yourself. You want to win with the smallest delta possible. And I've always subscribed to that. You don't want to win with like 60 seconds between. Well, if you've won by 60 seconds, then you've done too much, right? You're showboating. That tax, the mechanical tax that you've taken out of the car, that could lead to any kind of unpredictable, unreliability issues. You want to win with like less than a second between you and second place, right? That way you've reduced the mechanical tax, the mechanical toll that you've taken on the car, and the physical and emotional one that you've taken on yourself. That makes sense to me. Max, in early 2022, one of the greatest seasons had just ended. There was a massive overhaul of the aerodynamic regulations, genuine fight between Max and Charles. It's a long comment, Max. I can't get to that. 2022, early on in 2022, was sick. It was incredible. I enjoyed 2022, I'm not going to lie, as I've gone 5 minutes over. We need to add some more Game of Thrones titles to George. First of his name, King of King's Lynn, Norfolk. Yeah, I do like the references, I will be honest. Got to add a bit of something to the stream, right? Like, can't just come in here and talk numbers and facts and stats. That would be very boring. Right, guys, I'm going to go. Smash the like, says Mary, moderator extraordinaire. Please do smash the like, it all helps. Looking to take this channel to the moon in the end. There's going to be things going on over the next couple of weeks. 3 ridiculously good videos. I'm not sure what channel they're going to be pointed at. Maybe a new channel, I'm not sure. Thinking out loud here, divulging projects and thought processes that I probably should be keeping to myself. But there's going to be movements. Looking to come here to take over. Princess George. Mary, you're so harsh. Mary, you need to moderate your own comment there. Name calling. But it's a fit. You know what though, Mary? I will end on this. There is, I was talking to Nasha of Quick Stop F1 fame yesterday. And on the back of their last, I wasn't even going to talk about this, but I'll end the stream on this. On the back of what was ostensibly a god-tier podcast with FIA girly Denny, they've come in for a lot of flack, a lot of unnecessary flack, I feel, where there is undertones of, let's just say it as it is, right? There are racial undertones, because there were channels out there, and I'm not going to call any names, there are channels out there who have been a lot more scathing toward. Nasha didn't really say anything. Nasha and Tandy and Denny didn't really say that much. Okay, so they said fudge George Russell. They didn't use the word fudge. And that's not something that I would say on here. But is that the harshest thing? People are like, football and bloody American football are like 10 gazillion years ahead of us. And they say that YouTubers, those content creators say that stuff all the time. So does that stuff warrant the amount of toxicity and hounding and racism? that Tandy and Nasha received. I think it's deplorable. That sort of stuff I abhor. But you know what? Quick Stop they'll kick on, man. Strong units. It will take more than that to break their backs. Market leading settings. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know, peddlers. It makes me sad again to loop the circle. Going straight back to the intro for this stream, it makes me really, really sad to see that we have this brilliant sport and people feel passionately about it and people can argue back and forth. We will argue each and every single time on here, back and forth, to quote Nawal and Mary. And that's what I'm here for. But when it gets bloody insidious and toxic and spiteful and you're trying to affect people's mental health to the downside, why can't we all, the one common denominator, the common thread between us all is that this is the sport that we love, right? We might like different drivers, but this is the sport that we love. Can't we use that to unify rather than divide? I don't know. Maybe this is too much utopia talk, and I'm asking something that's beyond all of our reach, realistically. But it does sadden me. It recoils me from the space. Absolutely agreed, Alex. And I suppose finally on this, you can't really give where I'm at as far as the F1 space. And again, in my old age and my grey hairs, I think there is a level of maturity that I'm kind of growing in. I'm not there yet, peddlers. I'm by no means the perfect article, but there's a level of maturity that I kind of want to get to over the next few months as a content creator, realizing what matters from what doesn't matter. All of you guys in here going back and forth and like healthy dialogue and disagreeing, but in a way that's edifying and progressive, right? Because isn't that what grown, mature, sensible people do? So at this stage in my content creation, it's not utopia, says Namar. Sadly, don't know what I think it is. It shouldn't be, but because of the nature of the people, the participants that we're talking about, I don't think we're ever going to get there. I don't want to end the stream on a pessimistic note, but I just don't think there are so many. There are so many pillars of toxicity in this community. I once, but if we'd had this conversation 24 months ago, I'd hoped. Get me crying. I'm not crying. I'd hoped that I had a dream that one. No, genuinely, look, 24. Let me not trivialize the point. 24 months ago, if we'd had this conversation, I'd hoped that one day we'd be able to, more than just Cameron F1, right? That I'd be able to jump on Twitter and have pull off a spaces and have a serious conversation that didn't descend into toxicity. But guaranteed, here's where we are. More to come, William, I promise. Macon, what's going on? Here's where I think I am. You can't change the world, right? You can lay Will Smith settings. You can lay one perfect brick and do what you can within your control. But I can't jump on Twitter and solve for all the toxicity. I can try. What's going on, Alex? To be honest, Denny and Quick Stop don't engage with fair dialogue. I tried debating them, and they just said I'm a Max fan. Alex, I can't confirm or deny that, brother. I knowing Nasha, my counsel to Nasha. Here's where I am. I'll tell you where I am, and I'll tell you what I said to Nasha. Quick Stop. 24 months ago, I would have engaged every single comment under every single video. Now with circa 17,000 subscribers across 2 channels, it's not necessarily that I don't have the time. It's that I don't think people that are looking to engage me meaningfully and have a back and forth and challenge me like Walter has done and like Mary does and like Nawal does and like you all do on here. That's meaningful engagement. That means something to me. My channel is here for that, and I will take the time out to respond to those comments. But as the channel grows bigger, as a percentage of the whole, those meaningful engagements, sincerity is the minority, right? The majority is all like, stop crying, Cameron. what happened in Abu Dhabi? Like, it's all, and this is from both sides, by the way, Lewis Hamilton fans and Max Verstappen fans. But the maximalists, no pun intended, maximalist Lewis fans, maximalist Max fans, maximalist any fans aren't looking to engage meaningfully. And so, I'm sure Nash won't mind me sharing this. I don't think that's not the type of person who I'd talk to outside of the internet. So why within the confines of the internet, and because I have a YouTube channel, would I dignify the toxicity with a response? And therein lies my conclusion. Because ultimately that's only going to affect, as a content creator, I'm a man who speaks in front of a camera and has a mic, but ultimately I'm still a fallible human being who's super sensitive and deals with insecurity and all these other things. Like, that's the way that we all are, right? We all have things that we're dealing with on a daily basis. Mine are no more important or less important than anybody else's, but we all have them. So why would I take the time out to communicate, to indulge and dignify with a response anyone who's not engaging me on the level that I would engage anybody else with, if that makes sense? And that was my point to Nasha. Don't engage toxic trolls who are just keen to spurt out untruths, evidensibly untruths. Anyway, got a bit deep there. Mention that Hamilton guy. Oh, I feel like you've said that a gazillion times. Macon, you have the vernacular that is second to no other. Oh, Macon, I'm trying, man. I want to be. I want to come in here and present to you. I want to add value to you guys as F1 viewers, Macon, and you guys support me and you're there for me and you turn up to the streams and you watch the videos. So that's the least that I can do, Macon. Like, throw a couple buzzwords out there, articulate in the best way that I possibly can with my very noddy limited vocab. Try and be a bit verbose sometimes. Now, while the main problem with F1 is that fans no longer love the sport for the sport beyond a team or a driver. And that is sad. Now, while I hear you and your point is valid, but I disagree with you. I just think it's as at September 2023, I feel like anonymity enhances the problem, right? There's no anonymity means that there's no accountability, that people can go online and be whoever they want to be, however mean or vitriolic or toxic they want to, without fear of an equal and opposite downside coming back at them, right? Repercussions are just a nil. And sadly, the nature of humans, cognitive dissonance, confirmation bias, means that people are going to exercise that. They're going to take a yard if you give them an inch, eh? Cryptic, I'd show you my little sim racer, but sadly at the moment I don't have time. Well, I am Corey Brethren. Tell them for Mulvangoy, says Corey. Mulvangoy. Yeah, but that's it. You've nailed it in a nutshell. And I'm going to rap, man. I'm going to rap. Back on the vernacular vocabulary utilised between me and Shez is God tier. Absolutely vital. Shez and Baxty are levels. Listen, I will compete each and every single day with them in their vernacular, but they're far more succinct and far more to the point and far more impactful than I ever could be, I'll be honest. So I defer to them 9 times out of 10. Guys, I'm going to wrap, man. 84 of you still watching. Holy moly. That's serious, man. We need to start doing more of these 3 times a week, guys and girls. We will do it, because there's no excuse now. There's no excuse, especially on a non-race weekend. There are things to talk about. I'm going to try and come back out at some point over the course of the weekend and we can deep dive into this. Have a look at it, peddlers. I took loads of screenshots, but tech defeated me. We'll have a look at some point because it's interesting. How about this? I'll take some time to review and do some due diligence, and I will come and present to you my findings in full form. That way we can both learn something. Kaori, Louis, Gizmo, you guys are legends. Nawal, completely agree, sadly. Right, guys, I'm going to go and do some stuff. But listen, I appreciate, genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, let me look clearly into the camera when I say this. When you come on and listen to my ramblings and we go back and forth, by virtue of the fact that you don't need to, you all have busy lives, even if you're listening or engage, whatever you're doing, anytime you click a Camera F1 video, and I really, really appreciate that properly. It means a lot to me. We're not doing this for nothing. Hopefully over the next 36 months, things will start to happen. These things are long form, right? Nothing, everybody's a 10-year overnight success. So it takes a bit of hard work, but you guys engaging with me meaningfully in a way that's edifying and fruitful and holistic and progressive makes all this worthwhile, genuinely. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. What are you doing with your life? I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Happy Friday to each and every single one of you. And between now and next time, remember to look, but never stare. Peace.